Mostly, anyway. I think I'm suffering from a bit of old man issues. I've got a bit of a sore hip going on, but
oh man, yeah. Well, I feel you. Yeah, we can get into all of this but I did fun, but apparently a bit of stupid stuff during my holidays, with some paddling going on, and you discover muscles that you haven't felt for like decades. Didn't even know you had.
Minds of 18-year-olds.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right. But well, how are you? And welcome to we're already recording, Mark. So welcome to yet another. Well, this is a new season, I guess.
That is
Southern Summers and Northern Winter. Season 2, yeah, or is it 3? Yeah. Well, we've been doing this for not entirely a year, but almost. This is this is going well. This is great. And now we've had the summer break and been doing some traveling, both of us.
Definitely.
We got a lot to talk about. This is
we have.
Yeah. But first, you're going into summer now because you're in Australia.
When we last did a podcast, I think I was probably down here in a jacket and jumper.
Exactly.
I was talking about how cold it was, and fast forward 2 months, and it was 23 today and 25 tomorrow. So we're only 15, 16 days, I guess, divorced from winter, and there's already some warmish days coming through. But in saying that, on Saturday it's only meant to be 13, so it's going from 25 to 13. So the hot's here, but the warm's here, but the cold days aren't. We have gone yet at this stage.
We have the opposite here because during the weekend we're gonna have 28 degrees, and this coming Saturday the Oktoberfest starts here in. So this is going to be like a dream start. But next week it's going to be just rain and downpour. So that's for us living here in Munich, we're used to this. So the Oktoberfest can be anything from like 30 degrees and sunshine, clear blue skies, and snowstorm. We've had it all.
Well, I sort of had a summer break in the middle of winter anyway when I went to Asia. So I had 3 months of hot weather. So I was fine to come back to the cold weather actually after for a while. So it was quite warm in parts, definitely very warm, especially in China. It was like 38 most days.
Oh, that's
feeling like 44. So it was absolutely stinking hot. Like
that's the thing about Asia, because I am sort of I'm a bit on the fence and my wife's the same. We talk about this every once in a while about Asia, because a lot of people are attracted to Asia and to the culture and everything, and I can sort of understand that, but the deal breaker for me is definitely the humidity and the warm weather. I'm a northern guy. I'm Scandinavian. That's a killer for me. In spite of the fact that I can actually quite well manage. I mean, we spent a month in Thailand, and I didn't really mind, but it 38 degrees. That's just
there's a bit of a process to it. I think, we sort of try and get out early, and then, if it's hot, come back early afternoon, spend some hours, inside in the air conditioner by the pool, and, go back out for dinner and, out once the sort of sun starts to go down a bit. I mean, it doesn't get that much cooler a lot of the time, but it's amazing when you don't have the direct sun on you how much actually more manageable, I guess, the heat is at times.
Yeah, that's true. Speaking of that, because that's one thing that I definitely always insist on. I always insist on not eating or sitting at a table or having my food in direct sunshine. I refuse to do that. That's simply,
No.
if I enter a restaurant or outdoor serving area where I cannot have shade,
No.
I leave again. That's just not for me.
I've got to be honest with you. I don't want to be in the direct sunlight at any time if I can help it. But it's sort of impossible if you're walking around a little bit. But yeah, there's no way I'd be sitting outside eating or anything like that in the sun, because that's uncomfortable at the best of times. It's probably not all that good for your food to have 40-degree sun pounding down on it as well. It's definitely not good if you're going to keep your beer cold. That's for sure.
Which is also a deal breaker for us, Mark.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, but look, we went to Cambodia and we went to China.
Yes.
I went to the Philippines and
what was your favorite part of the whole trip?
Yeah, Cambodia was more humid than direct sunlight. It was probably overcast most of the days we were there, but still 35, saying 44. So it was still hot, but it was humid, so it wasn't too bad. China, on the other hand, was just blue sky and sun belting for like 9 days. Like
wow.
No cloud, just as hot as you can imagine.
And the humidity there?
Not really, not as much humidity as Cambodia and that, because I guess it's a lot further north than Southeast Asia. So the humidity's down. It's more a dry heat, possibly much like Australia at times. But just very relentless in its drive for the sun in China for sure. So. And like the difference between standing in the shade and then walking out into the sun was immense in China. Like it was just, I was glad to leave from the heat in the end. It was getting a lot like the heat, and there's only so many things you want to do inside. So, I was pretty happy to see the end of it and see the plane out of there. But, and then we got to Manila, and Manila was the opposite. It was hot but really, really humid, like 95% humidity.
Ooh,
so it was about 32 degrees and 95% humidity every day. So, it was definitely Sweatsville there. So, but we were only there for 4 days, and we're only in Cambodia for 4 days. We're in China for like 10 days. So it was definitely really hot in China. But everything's air conditioned, as you would expect everywhere. So but like I said, you can't just do everything inside. There's a lot of things you need to see outside. So, but didn't get sunburnt. Just chucked on the sunscreen each day and headed out as early as possible. And spent a bit of time inside in the afternoons because it was just too warm in the end.
That sunscreen factor, I guess 50 or so, is really coming in handy there.
50. Yeah, I had some of that. I actually had to buy some more because I ran out in the end. Because I think it's like when you're younger. I never used to use much sunscreen, and it didn't really bother to get older. Started getting little spots and on you and things like that, and you just go, well, your skin's not getting any younger as you get over 50, is it? So you need to sort of need to look after it a little bit better than what you once did.
If there are any kids listening in here, we can only advise you to use sunscreen. My son, 15 years of age, he's untouchable in any aspect. I'm telling him, please do wear sunscreen, and he just doesn't. It's just, and in spite of the fact that his dad has now twice. This is a new thing, but I just went to the skin doctor the other day and had some spot removed from my face, which they're currently analyzing, and it's most likely what they call white skin cancer. It's not lethal, but it's something that you need to have treated, and it's absolutely probably not completely avoidable. The more you age, your skin gets older, and so it's quite normal. But you can definitely delay any issues the more you wear sunscreen. It's just
when you're young, you feel invincible. It doesn't really matter. You're not thinking about, when you turn 50 or, 40 or 60, are you? You're like, it's all right,
Yeah, yeah.
I'll be fine. Hindsight's a beautiful thing, isn't it? But yeah, when you're young, you sort of feel like you own the world, I guess, and nothing can touch you, and sometimes your parents are like, yeah, do this, and you're like, yeah.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
So definitely. But
he can literally come home from a weekend. He's often spending the weekend with his girlfriend, and they live like an hour away. And more than once this summer, he's come back, and I said, well, what did you do? Yeah, we went to the outdoor pool area in the city. Yep. Yeah. So did you wear sunscreen? No. And it was just, but he doesn't get sunburned either. It's just, he's really good with, he just gets some color and that, but it's not really.
It's funny. It depends on sort of, it's been a while since I've seen your son, obviously, but depends on sort of skin makeup you've got too. Like I've got sort of red hair and fair, and I've got freckles, so I've got that sort of, that English skin that tends to.
I would think you would be sensible. You would have sensible
skin. Burn up a bit,
yeah.
But Rebecca's got more of a darker skin. She's not as fair as I am, and Marley has that too, and they tend to both be able to, go out in the sun a little bit more and not get as burnt as easily. Yeah. But me and my other daughter, Willow, she's red hair and fair skinned as well. Yeah. Like she burns at the drop of a hat. So, yeah. I mean, that's no excuse not to put sunscreen on, because I always tell Rebecca these days to put sunscreen on.
Yes.
When she's, when we're going out, especially when we're travelling, not so much around home, even though I should get into the, I guess, the habit of putting it on every day, even when I'm going to work here. But because I'm in and out of buses and cars, I don't sort of worry about it as much as, say, when I'm travelling and I know I'll be outside, walking around for, half a day and things like that. That's when I tend to ramp it up more. But yeah, I guess it's probably a habit that we should get into every day, no matter what we're doing, I guess. Like
I remember when we were traveling around the world, we spent I think 3 or 4 weeks in Melbourne with Alex's cousin. He has a house and family there, and on the kitchen counter there was literally like a 2 or 3 liter with a pump
bottle.
Yeah. So it was just standard equipment in the household, So every morning the kids went to school, they got this a couple of pumps, rubbed all over their.
Yeah. Look, schools are pretty big on that here. Like I know, like especially in primary school or the lower school. Do you call it primary school over there? Like
It's
about grade 6 or something. I think
something like
Yeah. So our school here, our local school here, like the kids weren't allowed out at recess and lunchtime unless they had like a wide-brimmed hat that was part of the uniform. So unless you actually had your wide-brimmed hat, you had to stay inside at lunchtime and recess, because it was just the SunSmart the SunSmart rule of the school. Yeah, you had to always wear your hat outside. So
exactly.
It's probably not a bad idea.
So because sunscreen is something that it can be quite costly, but I don't know. What do you pay for like a big?
Like a big one of them would be pretty dear in Australia. Like I would suggest that. I think most of them come in maybe here might be a 500 mil maybe or like that, and I would suggest you'd be paying upwards of $25 Australian. So I don't know what's that's probably 15
euros,
13 euros, something like that for a bottle of sunscreen. But there's some places in the world. If you go to Bali, actually, like you get a 200 mil one, and it will cost you that in Bali. Sunscreen's outrageous in some parts of the world. But you certainly need it wherever you go. So, but anyway, none of us got really fried, so that was a good thing anyway.
Yeah. But the thing is, with sunscreen, you shouldn't go for the cheapest option either. You should probably go for something that's has a documented
I think there's a popular one in Australia. I don't know if it's a worldwide one. I think it's called Banana Boat. That's one.
Yeah, we know that one.
Yeah, that seems to be popular everywhere, and they make a few different types. I don't know if they're any different. It's a bit like the scam with Panadol and Nurofen. They say there's all these different types to fit everything, but I think a few years ago they got caught and they were all just actually the same, but they put a different name on the box, like Fast Absorb, for osteo for this, and in the end they found out that they were all actually just the same tablet, and they were charging more for some. So I'd be surprised if Banana Boat really wasn't any different, because they have one for sport, for swimming, for this, for that, and they're all probably just all the same sunscreen put into all of them, and just the SPF might be different maybe on some, but so Banana Boat tends to be the major one here, and there's another one that I think is done by like the Surf Lifesaving Association of Australia. That seems to be another popular brand, and after that you just go back to your generics at the supermarkets. Sell themselves their home brand ones. So but they're definitely always on sale, and I'll be ramping up at this time of year. Best times to buy them is in winter because they're all cheap then.
And some brands, some products, they have a shelf life. So I mean,
expiry date.
You can't just have them lying around for 5 years and expect them to be having the same protection. It runs out.
Definitely not.
So what was the strangest thing you had to eat? I
actually made once again. We'll go back to China. I actually made Rebecca eat sea snails. I didn't eat it. I darted out of it, but she had a sea snail for sure.
And what was her reaction to that?
She didn't like it. It's really chewy and not so great, but because we went to we had a dinner, so with the family that Willow, my daughter, lives with in China. So they had this big spread of everybody brought everything out: sea snails and pippies and oysters and friggin' all sorts of seafood. And I don't mind seafood, but I wouldn't say I'm all in on seafood like some people are. Some people absolutely love seafood, and so I sort of darted out of it and let Rebecca try the sea snail, but she didn't overly love it. So which was fine. I can't say I ate anything really adventurous besides that on this trip. I'll be honest with you. In Cambodia, we didn't eat a lot, except for because it was really hot all the time. So, and I found that I was drinking all day, not just beer, like hydrolytes and stuff like that, and I was really, really sort of found myself full most of the time just through liquid because it was so hot and so sweaty. So I think actually a couple of nights we just had some spring rolls, like local spring rolls. So just something simple and light with with a beer or a cocktail, and that was sort of dinner. But I went to a night market one night in Cambodia and had a couple of traditional dishes. One was called lok lak. I think it was really just a beef sort of stir fry with some Cambodian spices in it and things like that. So it still was meat orientated a lot in Cambodia. So I didn't really eat too much in Cambodia. We're only there for like, I don't know, 4 nights anyway. So and I think out of that, 2 of them nights we just had some spring rolls down at the local bar on the corner where we were sitting around most nights doing that. So, and one night we were on a boat cruise, so they just brought out some fruit platters and some snacks and beer that we had. So so I didn't really didn't go too far off in Cambodia, but China as well. China, because it was a bit of a funny trip actually, because we stayed in an apartment and my daughter actually came and stayed with us stayed with us every night actually. She basically moved out of the house with the people she was staying with and came and stayed with us for the whole week. And where the apartment was, or is that we've stayed in before, it's a little bit sort of out of the centre of the city where she lives. Yeah. So there's not really many food options around it unless you get back in a cab and go 10 minutes down the road, which is not that far, but and doesn't cost much. That's not really the reason, but sometimes after you've had a big day, once you get home, you just want to stay home. So spend a bit of time ordering food online, but we're just having, dumplings and wontons and different types of Chinese soups and things like that. So nothing adventurous, but still very much what they would eat there, because I try and stay away from too much, Western style food, because I can eat that here. So, it sort of bothers me if I get too bogged down in just eating what I can eat.
Yeah, that's actually a thing, because I tend to try to do the same when I'm somewhere and say, okay, let's try what the locals eat. That's usually because the most traditional, the things you can get anywhere are mostly extremely pricey, or can be. Sure. So for instance, last year we went to Vienna, and I was, let's go for some local goulash, and because the Austrian Hungarian kitchen is that's in Vienna. And then when you go to, and if you want the traditional tourist food, it's mostly expensive. So I don't understand why people insist on eating what they can get anywhere. So I'm with you. I'm with you there.
I mean, we did go to Macca's or McDonald's once. I'm actually interested. I don't actually like their food much. I'm always interested in what they have in the menu, like in overseas countries, because it obviously varies quite a lot. So we did actually go into McDonald's one morning for breakfast to try their breakfast menu, and I had an orange juice coffee with orange juice in it. That's one thing they seem to like. Like there, black coffee topped up with orange juice.
What? It sounds almost like
I can't remember what. I had some sort of muffin that they don't make in Australia, and I can't quite. But instead of a hash browns, they have like these dough breadsticks that they have, which are really nice. So I had that, and we actually went to Pizza Hut, only because Pizza Hut in China is actually like a restaurant. You go in and they seat you, and a waiter comes around, properly dressed, and serves you. And you have knives and forks and cutlery and side plate, and a wine cup on the table. So it was all very fancy, which was what I wanted to see, because in Australia, Pizza Hut is really don't have any restaurants anymore. They're just a takeaway pizza shop, like where you just order online, much like Domino's sort of thing. I don't know if they have Domino's in Germany, but it's a big pizza brand in other parts of the world. So I was a little bit intrigued by that. But the issue is, if you go in places like that, you pay what you would pay in Australia or in, I assume, Germany or in America. You're paying Western prices to go and eat foreign takeaway or drink, Starbucks or things like that. Anywhere in the world, you're paying the same sort of prices that you'd pay in the West, most definitely. So I sort of stayed away from that a bit. I went to Starbucks one morning in Phnom Penh, only because it was the first place opened at 6 a.m. when I went out on the street. So I went there and had a grande, I think they call them. I'm not a big knower of Starbucks, because I think there's only about 20 of them in Australia. They mostly all shut down in Australia at one stage. So I think it was a grande. So I think that might be either the large one or the medium one. I think it was, and it was about $6 US. So it was about $10 Australian. I don't know what that is in euros. So, but then the next morning I found a local chain called Amazon, which is an Asian chain, and I got the same thing for $2 US. So,
there you go. It's Starbucks is also, it certainly had its heyday here in Germany as well, and they are long gone now. You can still, the heydays are long gone. Starbucks is still around, just renovated and moved to new a location in the city center. But I haven't been there. I actually still may have a gold bonus card somewhere lying around with some money on it. But I don't ever go there. I used to go there quite a couple of times a week, actually, to just sit down and work from my laptop and just enjoy.
Well, it's handy for that, because the Wi-Fi is always good in Starbucks. I'll give them that. Yeah. But the coffee's, I find the coffee's pretty average there.
And immensely overpriced.
Weak and milky. Double shot at least, just to make it not look like a cup of milk,
Yeah.
So that's what I find. That's what I find anyway. So yeah, so I don't generally go to Starbucks if I can help it. But this morning in Phnom Penh it was opened, and so I wandered in at 6 a.m. when I was out early, having a look around for coffee, and did some some social media posts. I sat there in the air conditioning for about an hour or an hour and a half, and had me one coffee, and and went back to the hotel. So yeah, but other than that, I was just drinking local coffee. In China, there's a chain called Luckin, which we've had a fair bit at, and it's basically the Chinese version of Starbucks, but the coffee's better and the coffee's quarter of the price. So so we did a bit from there, obviously, and then in Cambodia, I was trying to think where we had coffee there. I just had a few in Manila. There's a lot of little coffee shops around there, big coffee shop culture, so it was quite good for coffee. Coffee was probably medium priced if you weren't actually in the tourist streets. So I'd say it was maybe $2 or $3 for a coffee there. Some prices in Manila were actually quite expensiver than what I thought. But we were staying in a tourist area too, and so when we were buying things was in a tourist area and at tourist type places. So, but one thing about Manila is if you were drinking beer, which we drank a bit of, and cocktails, because we're in this tourist area where there's this big tourist street that was full of like bars and restaurants and things like that. Often happy hour went from like 10 a.m. in the morning to like 7 o'clock at night. So beers were like...
That's a proper happy hour.
Yeah, 2 for the price of 1 during that time, and things like that. It was actually... I don't know. It was a bit of a red light area. It wasn't. There was no like, I don't know. I get in trouble for saying this. There was no like strip joints, or there was no, there was no brothels. I don't know whether I'm allowed to say that on podcasts or anything like that. But there was definitely like ladies of the night, on that street, trying to. Acosta blokes or people, who were walking up and down, and guys trying to sell you boxes of Viagra, and that sort of atmosphere, which always makes for good people watching, it's always, I find it interesting. So so we sat down on this street a few nights, and just had some drinks and some food, and watched the goings on, that was happening, and and things like that. So so they had a happy hour, obviously, because of what was on offer there. Most people came out at night time. So during the day, everything was, everything was on special, was cheap to try and get people to, to come down there, I guess, during the day and not exactly late at night. But
it's the same thing in Amsterdam. You see families walking through the red light. It's just a very concentrated red light district, but there's a certain street where everything is really happening, and they stand, in the windows and they dance, and and if you go there, you can't be offended. It's just this is what you could expect. You must expect there. So if you can't see stuff like that, don't even go near it. It's just
well, I would say this street in, Jesus, I can't even remember the name of it. I was only there a month ago. This street in Manila was probably only 200 metres long. So, and like I said, it's just really bars and restaurants and nightclubs, on each side of the road. And the girls weren't really dressed suggestive either. Like, so they're just out in, you could tell because they stand on the corner and, they're talking to folks that are going past. But they weren't dressed down in like, I've said to you before, like I went to that street in Thailand, and but in Thailand they're basically stand there in lingerie and high heels and and it's looking right at you. But in this street in Manila, they might have just been wearing a dress or a pair of pants and a top. They were looking nice, but they weren't. If you didn't know and you walked down there and they didn't accost you or try and second to you for whatever they wanted, you probably wouldn't be overly aware that was what they were. Yeah, that was
their
doing,
business.
What I mean? So, so it was sort of incognito a little bit. And like I walked down there with my camera one night, and they were, I was trying to take some video for YouTube, and certainly didn't want to be filmed. A lot of them. Like,
no. But I'll say in Amsterdam, they're actually in their lingerie in the windows. Yeah. So that's very suggestive, and the mission is very obvious. So
yeah,
so
that's what it was like in Thailand.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and like I said, I walked down there just to take some footage of the area. I wasn't going down there specifically to film any of them, but they were all very, very camera shy. Like didn't want to be known. Would sort of turn their head, duck their head, look the other way, and that's fine, because they might, for all you know, they might have families or things that they're out, making money for their life. You don't actually know, I guess. And, I guess I don't want someone watching a YouTube video about somewhere in Manila and he sees possibly his girlfriend or his wife or someone, or your mum sees you or your dad sees you or, something like that. So, yeah, it's all fair in love and war. But yeah, Manila was okay. So we only spent 4 days in Manila. Not that much to see in Manila itself, to be honest. We went to a few historic sites. There was an old fortress that the Spanish built in the 15th century. We went and had a look at that. We went down to the Bay Area there. There's a lot of shopping centres. Like, I'm not sure if I've been to somewhere that had as many shopping centres. Nearly every block was a multi-storey shopping centre. Yeah, so went to that, went to a few markets, but other than that, I think you could wrap Manila up in, it's probably a two night stay, and that would be, you'd see the highlights of it. Probably some of the worst traffic I've ever come across.
Wow.
Anywhere in the world. We tried to go 10.5 kilometres from a shopping centre across the city to this fort that I was telling you about, and it took 1 hour and 50 minutes in a cab to go 10.5 kilometres. So it was atrocious.
Wow.
At the best.
So sort of an old town, is that even? Can you see that? Can you experience that in Manila, or is it just all modernized?
And... There's an old town area, actually, which was when the Spanish took over. So it was where this fortress was. And then there was like a cathedral that's a UNESCO site. It was built in the 15th century. And, the last 3 or 4 popes had been there, over the years. And, there was some memorials in there to wars and people and stuff like that. So, so it was a pedestrian area. So only horses and carts and friggin' tuk-tuks running around trying to take you in places. But it's a very, what can I say about Manila? It's a strange city. It's like a city with 4 cities inside it. So there's some distinctive different areas. We stayed in this area called Makati, but then there's this other area called BFG, Bonifacio Global City, which is like a new part of the city that they built full of skyscrapers. And then there was another section. So it's like 3 or 4 cities in one, and they're distinctive areas. And so it was really no true centre of the city, I wouldn't say, because there's like 3 or 4 cities that actually make up Manila, I would think is probably the best way to describe it. Because there's I don't know what they say, 15, 16 million people live in Manila or something like that. So it's quite big. And because it's, I'm anxious to say this, but because it's Asia, it's fairly unorganised. It could have a far better roads and far better, public transport and all that sort of stuff to make getting around it easier, but it doesn't, and that's common with a lot of cities in Asia. So that's nothing out of them.
I don't think that's necessarily negative. I think it's
not at all.
It's something that because I've observed this in Asia too, that they're just very pragmatic in whatever they do. So they just make the best out of it where they are with what they have. So that's really the way I see it.
It's pretty casual. Like we were pulled up somewhere. We were getting this drive. We're in a Grab, which is the Asian equivalent of an Uber. So we're going back to our hotel from the other side of the city, and we're in a little bit of a traffic jam. We're in a traffic light, and our driver's coughing. He goes, I've got a sore throat. I'm just getting out of the car to walk over to the shop there to get some cough lollies. So we're sitting in the middle of an intersection. He just gets out of his car, like, surrounded by cars in every direction, and he just walks out of his car, walks over to his shop there. We're not parked on the side of the road. We're parked like right in the middle. There's like 2 cars on that side of us, 2 cars on that side of us, cars in front of us, cars behind us. Yeah, just gets out of his car and wanders over to the shop and, comes back. Traffic hasn't moved, but, just leaves his car because I guess no one can steal it. Can't go anywhere because we're surrounded by, traffic on the side of you. But, just things like that, like, yeah. And they're the sort of things that I really love about Asia because, you wouldn't see that happening in a Western city. You drive to worry about someone stealing their car or, something like that. But, the more you experience, I guess, Western countries like ours that are very rule-orientated and things like that, the more I appreciate going to unorganised cities, as I would call it, in Asia, like Phnom Penh, which was the same, and Manila. China's a bit sterile. It's much like Australia or Germany or the US. Everything's nice and big and shiny and new.
Very
and
regulated.
Things like that. Yeah, very regulated. But other places in Asia like Phnom Penh and Manila and these sort of cities that are not yet fully integrated into the tourist facilities, as I would call it. They haven't got great infrastructure that's built specifically to drag tourists in. It's still very very local in parts, and they're the cities that I more and more still love to go and see. We're sitting there talking about the other day, and I would easily move to Phnom Penh. I could go and live there for 6 months, and just wander around and see what's going on, and things like that, because it's like Bali's similar to this. There's sort of really no town planning in a lot of these cities. So you'll see a nice skyscraper, and next door will be a shanty shack, where someone's living, and so there's not like a row of, in a lot of places, not like a row of apartment blocks. There'll be one apartment block, and then there'll be like a slum sort of thing next door, and then there'll be a half-built apartment block, and things like that. Yeah. So it's all very random. Like it's not. Yeah, it's not as if you're going to go, I'm going to go down the street and this whole street's going to be perfectly nice-looking apartment buildings like you would see, in Melbourne or Munich or things like that. You just don't know what you're going to see when you go around every corner. What's, and there'll be people on the street fixing their cars and motorbikes, and, there'll be stalls selling this and that and all that sort of stuff. And that's, like I said, I love the randomness of Asia. So.
Yeah. But and I guess depending on what mind you're in, I mean, it's because I can appreciate that too. But there are people who they are more to the more regulated thing.
Definitely.
Typically, my fellow Danes or Germans, they tend to like the kind of order that they're used to, and
they're used to.
And if you go to Asia, you certainly should not expect that. You're going to be disappointed.
I guess that's a big reason why I guess a lot of people actually don't travel, because for some people the unfamiliarity of other places is really hard to wrap your head around. Like that's way outside of your comfort zone and what you're used to. I think. Talking about this the other day with someone, but and so for a lot of people it's hard, and you can actually get stuck, or not stuck, I shouldn't say this because you go to the same place every year. I was going to say you can actually get stuck going to the same place every year because you feel comfortable, but I'm not saying you are, but this is a general, this is a generalisation, because I was speaking to a girl I work with, and she's like 20 and she's been to Bali like 3 times, and she's like, I really want to go to Vietnam and I want to go here, and she's like, but I'm not sure. And I'm like, just don't get stuck in the habit of just going to Bali because you feel comfortable with it, and things like that, because that's where the only place you've been. And like I said, it's a big step to go somewhere that you've never been, because it can be daunting. Like even I feel that at times, and I've been to 45 countries and traveled extensively, but it's still it can be very, very daunting for people to go outside of somewhere that they've never been.
And I only go to Denmark every year because, that's where I'm from,
you're from
and my family's there. If it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't go every year. But as long as my mom lives, I'm going to go there.
You gotta go.
So,
That's fair enough.
Yeah. So,
That's fair enough. It's like I'm not saying
no.
you, so.
But no, I just wanted to say that I agree with you that you should traveling, that you get the best experiences of traveling when you step out of your comfort zone and try something new. Because I'm like you, I never understood people. I got friends who, for 25, 30 years, they go to the same hotel and
Same
even
place.
ask for the same room. For God's sake, come on.
I don't know if that's really a holiday. I mean, it's really strange, isn't it? And I was saying to this girl who I work with, her name's Shay, and I'm saying, like, one of the things that I do a lot, and I have done a lot over the time, is if you really feel uncomfortable, Google Street View is an underrated tool. If you look up your hotel, you can actually look on Street View around the neighbourhood that you're in and see, like, okay, so there's a restaurant there and there's a supermarket there, and if I go up here there's a park, or the metro station's down here, and you can't underestimate how much better that makes you feel going somewhere where you've actually, I think you can say, yeah, okay, I think I've got a bit of an idea about what's here, and as you're approaching your hotel, you go, oh, I remember seeing that, or I remember seeing that. Like, I think familiarity plays a big part in you feeling comfortable in other countries, I think. So
it's really good. It's really good advice. Advice because I hadn't thought of it like that. But I tend to street view stuff as well. Just if let's say you arrive in a cab from the airport and you already know how the building looks like.
Definitely.
You can at least avoid that the cab driver will take you around the block for an extra spin,
Most definitely.
Because then you can say, I've seen the building. I know it's there. It's just let me off here.
So most definitely.
Yeah.
So we also, obviously, we flew out. We had a lot of flights going on. So I'm going to say that no matter who you fly with, 5-star, 2-star budget, it does not mean that you're going to be any better off. So we had a couple of delayed experiences, and both of them were with 5-star airlines. So Singapore, we were delayed for 3.5 hours in Singapore through operational matters, they called it. I'm like, well,
which is a broad definition,
operational matters. I'm like, well, I can see 100 Singapore jets sitting out there on the runway, so why can you not bring one to my gate and move us along? But I guess to their, they at least brought out some food and gave everyone a bag with some food in it and stuff like that while we were waiting. But, I'd been on a flight overnight from Australia, left at 11, got there at 5 in the morning, so I probably would have been much more happier if we had just got on the flight 2 hours later instead of 5.5 hours later to head to our destination. But that was such. So, and then the real shit show started with Cathay Pacific in China. So we arrived to Qingdao International Airport. Flight was meant to leave at 2:30, so we get there at 11:30 because I'm a big one on getting there way early just in case. Something happens, but that doesn't turn out in your favour if you've got a delay because you end up sitting there forever. But so we get there at 2:30. I get there at 11:30, check in, checked our bags, sort of hadn't gone through passport control yet, but I'm looking at the board and it's like, flight's delayed 15 minutes. Yeah, okay. Flight's delayed 30 minutes the next time I check. Okay. So and then we said goodbye to our daughter, and there was tears flowing there, as you do when you leave your daughter in a foreign country.
Yes, yeah.
Her and her mother are crying, and we're all upset and blah blah blah. So we check through, and then we get through to passport control, and the Chinese government have checked our power banks to make sure they're legitimate and all this sort of stuff as they
now do.
Yeah, because they've got to be certified in China to a specific rating, or otherwise you get your power banks confiscated for some reason because they're not up to standard.
And then you could buy new power banks manufactured in China. Yeah.
Yes, basically, which I did. So then we get through. Okay, and we're in in passport controlled area of international departures. And it just keeps saying delayed, no time. And at this stage, we had a connecting flight in Hong Kong to Manila, that was leaving I think at like 8:30 at night. So we were meant to leave 2:30, be in Hong Kong 5:30, leave Hong Kong 8:30, be in Manila like 11 o'clock or something like that. That was the scenario. So we get in, and then it's on the board. It's like delayed till 5:45. So I'm like, well, okay, this is starting to get a little bit crunchy as to whether we're going to make our connection in Hong Kong. So after repeated trips to the counter to see the staff at Cafe, no, it'll be right. Plenty of time. We'll get you there. You know, you'll still have an hour and a half in China, in Hong Kong, because everything's been delayed. There was a big storm in Hong Kong or something, which I actually did see on the news. So all flights out of Hong Kong had been slowed down and delayed. So they're like, okay, we're boarding 5:45. And then we're still sitting on the runway at 6:45 because they arrived late. They lost their departure slot. They didn't have clearance to take off. In the end, we sat on the tarmac for another hour in the plane, and then left, and then got to Hong Kong just as our other plane to Manila was leaving. So we had to. They took us. There's a fair few on this plane that were going all around the world, because obviously Hong Kong was the hub. So everyone was going to Hong Kong. There's people going to America. There's people going to Europe, Australia.
So they all had connecting flights.
Yeah, all had connecting flights going everywhere. So so we go down to this counter, and they're like, look, you're gonna have to stay the night. We'll put you up in this hotel, so here's a voucher. Just go outside here, and there's a shuttle bus, so we're like, okay. So we follow this path, and then we go outside, and there's like about 45 buses sitting in this terminal, none of them with a name on them at this stage. So we're asking people left, right, and centre, do you know which bus this is that goes here? And people are, maybe it's up there, maybe it's down here, So we finally catch this bus. I reckon it was about 12. It was about 11:30. So it was probably 2 hours. 2 hours after we'd landed in Hong Kong and got vouchers for this hotel. So we finally get to this hotel and check in, and it's 12:30. And they told us to be back at the airport at like 4:30 in the morning. So it was really not really even worth going to a hotel. We probably could have just stayed in the airport. But they're like, and we're like, well, how do we get back? They're like, just catch a shuttle bus back. Didn't tell us that the shuttle bus doesn't start running until 6 o'clock in the morning, though.
Yeah.
So then we have to get a taxi back to the airport, all this sort of stuff like this. And I'd paid for seats on these flights, so I didn't get that on the second flight. And so it was a real shit show. And I actually messaged Cafe when I got home about that. I said, look, I want a refund because I paid for seats, because I wanted these seats. And we didn't get them. And they're like, yeah, we'll give you a refund. I've never heard from them since. So so I'm pretty unimpressed with Cathay Pacific in the end. It was a little bit of a shit show. The plane was nice though, but I mean, some of it wasn't their fault, but I guess, some of it probably was. They could have handled it better customer service wise as well, but
they usually can.
So 2 5-star airlines, both delayed. So there's no guarantee that just because you pay more for a better class of airline that you're not going to get delayed or you're not going to have issues, I guess, in these days and times with air. I want to know how these airlines actually get a rating. How do you get a 5-star airline rating? Do you know? Does someone go and test it, or is it from customer reviews? I've never actually looked into that.
No, me neither. But I would guess it's probably similar to 5-star ratings in hotels. There are certain things that you must have or have on offer, customer service wise. Yeah, but that's one thing. What you have on offer, what you can do, officially, but what you actually do, how you actually manage it, is an entirely different thing, isn't it? So
it is. So there was a little bit going on there, and so eventually we got to Manila the next morning at about 10 o'clock. So which probably wasn't overly bad because we probably wouldn't have got out of the hotel until 9 or 10 o'clock anyway. So we got there and I'd read a lot of stories that people reckon Manila Airport was a shit show, but when we got there was next to no planes arriving, and we just I reckon we were out of there in half an hour and into our hotel within an hour of landing. So that was So that was pretty good in the end. But yeah, some strange things. We flew home from Manila with this airline called Cebu Pacific. They're this budget. There's no business class or anything like that. But I don't know if this is a directive from the Australian government. But when we checked in for international departures, like they had a whole crew of staff there and like tables, and everyone had to open their suitcase and show the staff what was inside your suitcase, and then they put a stamp on it or something to say it was okay. So I don't know whether they'd had trouble with stuff going into Australia before, and the Australian government had told them, okay, you really need to start checking what your customers are bringing into Australia or not. But I'd never seen it. This was like right next to, so when you lined up to check your luggage, on the conveyor belt and stuff like that. So before you actually got to there, after you snaked your way, down the line that's normally there, you had to open your suitcases on a table for staff to see what was in your suitcase, shut it back up, and then put your bag down there. Then get your ticket and put your bag off.
And you don't know if that was that the case for all destinations or just Australian?
No, just the ones that was going to Australia on this flight. Wow. I've seen other ones going to Europe and things like that. So yeah, I still can't work it out whether it was just something that they were doing. Like, anything I can suggest is that maybe they'd had trouble going into Australia before with people carrying too much stuff that wasn't allowed in Australia, and they weren't declaring, so that they were checking. And then to top it off, though, when you went to board your plane, they did it again with your carry-on, with your backpack or with your small suitcase. You then had to open it at the boarding gate as well and show them what you actually had in your backpack or your carry-on suitcase. So twice you got checked on the way to getting on your plane. So yeah, I had seen obviously being checked at the boarding gate before, because some airports actually had the scanners right at the boarding gate where you have to put your bag through. I know in Singapore we had that, and I know in Bali they have that, but I'd never seen a physical check before where they were opening your bags twice actually to board a plane. So yeah, it was a little bit unique.
Yeah, but I would assume it has something to do, in fact, with because I know Australia is very protective of the wildlife and nature and stuff, so they don't want invasive species or stuff coming in.
So it was quite strange. I'd never actually had that before, because normally they just take your bag. Well, some countries, in China actually, I should say, in China, you put your bag, you go get your ticket at the check-in counter and you put your bag through, and then you're meant to stand there in China for about 20 or 30 seconds, and they actually have a scanning machine at the end of the conveyor that scans your bag, and then they say, okay, off you go. So, but, the places like Melbourne and that, a lot of airports, they don't. Once you get your ticket, you put on the conveyor belt and it's off, and then you don't see who you until you get out the other side. And then, if you've got to declare something at customs, it happens on the other side of the earth when you're, when you're getting out of the plane. So it was quite a bizarre experience, but that's one of them things about travel, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, it's a little easier to just rent a car, go from Munich to Denmark, and
most definitely it is. Sometimes
you can bring whatever you want. But I'm actually inside the EU. We do have various regulations. For instance, if you bring your pet, but I've never actually seen that being actually enforced. Enforced. Because a lot of people they bring their dog, and your dog is supposed to go to the vet and have a certificate and sometimes even quarantined for a week or two to make sure that it's a healthy pet. But I've never actually heard about it being enforced or seen it enforced. They don't ever open people's cars and take out the dog and look at the certificates. I've never seen that, but there are rules internally in the EU.
There's a lot of best case scenario rules like that, isn't there? That don't actually enforced. A lot of the a lot of I think So it was quite strange, but like I said, that's what traveling's about, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah, it is.
Experiences. These
and you're
things
going. What?
Yep.
No, I was just going to ask. How because you're already planning the next trip. When is that, Mark? In 2 weeks or?
So I'm planning 2 trips. I've got 2 trips coming up. So
Oh,
I'm going to Bali 1st of October, so just for 10 days until the 10th. So we've got 10 days just in Bali for a quick. I don't know. It just seemed like a good idea at the time. It seemed like I needed a holiday after being home for 6 weeks, so I thought
yeah.
I'd better go.
Yeah, but also because you got that Facebook page, so you need to update your knowledge.
So I've got a Bali website and things like that. So we needed to go to Bali because we hadn't been there for this will be 16 months or something since we've been to Bali. So I've sort of come to a bit of a grinding halt on writing too much about Bali because it's too far removed since I've been there, and it's one of the countries where it's hard to keep track online because small businesses a lot of them don't have websites and things like that, so you can't actually update unless you're on the ground with a lot of stuff. So so we're going there to Sanur, which is where we normally stay for 10 nights, and we're going to stay in 4 different hotels, a couple of really good ones, a couple of really cheap ones too. So that'll be interesting to see what the contrast is like, and interested to see what's changed in this area of Bali. I know there's a lot of building going on in the area where we write about and where we stay all the time. So it'll be interesting to see what's happened in the last 16 to 18 months since we've been there. We'll last there in May last year. So by October it'll definitely be nearly 18 months since we'd have been to Bali. So we're going there, and then I actually booked flights to go to. We're flying to Singapore on 10th of January, 12th of January or something. So we're going to Singapore for 2 nights, and then we're going to go slip over the border into Malaysia and go to Johor Bahru, which is a city in Malaysia, for a couple of nights. Then Malacca, which is a UNESCO town, for a couple of nights.
Yeah.
And another city called Ipoh in Malaysia for a couple of nights. And then Kuala Lumpur for 5 nights. And then when we get to Kuala Lumpur, Rebecca's flying to China to pick Willow up because Willow's coming home. She's getting out of China for now. She wants to come home and go to uni and be a teacher. So that's happening. So Rebecca's flying to China by herself, and me and Marley, because Marley's come with us, me and Marley are going to go back to Bali for 3 nights, and then back to Australia because Marley's got to start school because she's in her last year of school, so she's got to be back to start that. And Willow which starts on the 27th of January, she's got to be back for school. But Willow's university course in China goes until the 31st of January, and then she's got to actually leave China on the 31st of January, the same day that her school finishes. Is the same day her visa's up. So Rebecca's going to China to help her pack everything up and then come back to Australia on that day. And so we're doing a bit of a split, and me and Marley will go to Bali and come back a few days earlier, and then Rebecca and Willow will land in Melbourne about 5 days after we come home. So, and Willow's Chinese family are also coming with them to have a holiday in Australia for 3 weeks. So there's a busy 5 weeks going on in January. We'll be overseas and then in Australia, and me and Rebecca will be trying to work and take time off to do things with the Chinese people that are coming, and so it'll all be happening.
Do these Chinese friends of yours, do they speak any English? Because we could have them on the podcast. We could ask them, what they think about the world and traveling. And I think my friend Gary, the husband, he'd be happy to be on the podcast. He'd actually like to start a podcast. He was telling me once. So if we can organise it, I'll definitely get him to come and jump on the podcast. Yeah, we could do that because I would love to see the Chinese perspective of how they see traveling in the world. Obviously, we wouldn't go into any politics and stuff, but we could you could talk about anything else.
Okay. No. I'll definitely tee that up with him. I'll get him, make sure he's here on a night when they're around. So she's coming with his wife and their little daughter, who Willow looks after. They're coming for 3 weeks, and Gary flies in the next week, so he's here for about 10 days, and they're here for about 20 days. So Tia's his wife's name, and Gary and their little daughter's name's Gracie. So they're coming to Australia for 3 weeks for a holiday, and then they'll go back and. Yeah, we'll start university online from here, she reckons, for now, but she might only do it decide she wants to go back to China after a bit and do online from China. I don't know. I think she wants a little bit of a break. I think from the babysitting all the time, and just wants a little bit of a time off. So she's like, well, I think I'm going to come home. She would have had to have come home anyway, because she would have had to have renewed her visa. So she would have had to have come back to Australia to do that anyway. So either way, she was coming home. So Rebecca will go and spend 8 days or 9 days in China by herself with Willow, which, when we're talking about familiarity and being scared, my wife's never travelled anywhere internationally by herself, and she's quite concerned about it. And I said, look, it'll be fine. Willow will be at the airport on the other side to meet you. You know, Willow's coming home with you. So I said, so even for people, like I said, who've travelled a lot, it can still be a challenge. Yeah, she's very, very apprehensive about it. And I said, well, I can't go because Marley needs to start school. Like, you know, so I said, you know, we can't delay it by a week at the start. Like, you know, maybe once she was in school for a bit, she could probably miss a couple of days, but you want to be there like at the very, very first few days of her last year of school. So I said, well, you know, we've got to come home. So if you want to go and help Willow to come home, then you're going to have to go to, you have to go to China by yourself. So,
sometimes the team needs to split up to serve the team the best. You know, it's teamwork.
But I booked flights out of Kuala Lumpur that leave an hour apart, so we'll all be able to go to the airport at the same time. And her flight leaves for Qingdao in southern China at 8 a.m. and mine and Marley's flight leaves on Malaysian Airlines to Bali at 9 a.m. So we'll just go to the airport together that morning, and she'll go north and I'll go south and, on a Friday, and then on the Sunday the next week. So 10 days later, she'll be back in Melbourne in the morning, and I'll pick them up they'll get the train back, and I'll pick them up at the nearest train station. And so
the thing is, people traveling alone, it's the same thing with your kids, and you worry and they worry, but usually things work out just fine. Just fine.
So I said, Willow will probably come and stay with you in the hotel anyway, things like that. So I said, it'll be fine. You'll be right. Like you only have to transit one airport in China, which we've been to before. So, you know, we've been through Wenzhou before. So it's not as if you've never been there. You only have to get off the plane, you know, and follow the signs, find your gate, and, you know, jump back on, and you'll be right. So but we've never travelled anywhere like internationally apart. So I've travelled before. I met Rebecca once. To Europe, but ever since, for the last 25 years, we've, obviously, as you do when you're married, you always travel together. So it's, so a little bit different for us to go somewhere apart. But I'm looking forward to spend a few days with Marley in Bali, just me and her, so hanging out on the beach and, you know, and things like that. And Willow and Rebecca will get to spend some time together. So in the end, it's a bit of a win-win for all parties as well. Yeah. Because the time you get to spend one-on-one with your kids, you know, diminishes the older they get. So, you know.
And before you know it, your current home with yet again a full family in the house will probably feel like too small.
I'll be like,
you'll be going to your shed more often than.
I'll be like, Willow, can't you get back to China? So that's happening, but I think she'll be back and forward to China, I think, all the time, because the family that she lives with, they're like, well, when you've got school holidays, like, we'll pay for you to fly back to China to come and stay with us, so you can,
that's nice,
teaching our daughter English, you know, and we want you to get online every week, you know, with her and speak. And Willow's got some students, she teaches English in China, so she's going to keep doing that online and things like that while she goes to uni, because she needs to make some money somehow, I guess.
Of course,
because,
that's a great way to make money.
Totally funding everything,
it's a great way to do it, and you know, entrepreneurish, I would say. You know, if she can do that, and that's really great, because it's one of the advantages of the modern technology, that you can actually, you know, be independent geographically of your income. And
her and Tia, which is the lady she lives with, you know, they've got some ideas for a couple of businesses online that they might try and do at some stage. So we'll see what happens there. Hopefully it works, because one of the real reasons they want to come to Australia is because they want their little daughter, Gracie, who's 3, they want to put her in like kinder or, preschool school thing, just for the 3 weeks that she's here, for 4 days a week, just because they're all about that, that cultural immersion and, being around foreign people to, broaden your mind. So she's going to go to kinder for the 3 weeks that she's here during the day. But Willow, my daughter, and her mother were talking about, maybe trying to start a business where, Tia can help people work out the visa side of things in China, and Willow can find, schools here that'll take these kids on short-term basis and things like that, and to start that sort of business up or something like that. Yeah. So I don't know. They may do it, they may not, but, it's always good to have some sort of plan that you can possibly
Absolutely.
Look into. So,
Absolutely. And if they don't do it, someone else will do it. So why shouldn't
we? Most definitely. Because it's actually quite amazing how many Chinese come here to do this. Like, Tia said that she's got 3 or 4 friends that are living in different places in Australia that just come out for a month or 6 months and just live here and send their kids to a local school just to get that, that English speaking, full immersion in a different society. So, so it's a sort of a really popular thing to do in China.
Yeah, I heard, people say that Australia, they have a very, very large Chinese community. Yeah.
Yeah, and they do. And so what worked out well is they're coming to Australia, but obviously I spoke about this before, but how all this happened was Willow works for a Chinese lady here who sort of facilitated with this other family in China that she's now living with. And so the Chinese lady that she worked for here in Australia is not going to be home all the time when they're here, so they're just going to go and stay in her house.
Okay,
so it's all because they're all, community-wise and things like that. So, so it's all sort of fallen into shape. So that part of the trip anyway, that's going to happen. So, so it'll be a busy few weeks. And I'm actually really looking forward to showing them around, bits of our area and things like that. It's quite funny. Gary, the husband, he's quite looking forward to going to a winery and being able to have one beer or have one glass of wine and then be able to drive, because in China it's 00. You can't have any alcohol at all.
Okay.
And drive. So he's like, I've never ever been able to just have a glass of wine and then
and
like
then
go for lunch and have a glass of wine and then drive. Like, so he's like, so he was a little bit, things
that's
that we
one of those. That's one of those rules that wouldn't really work, at least not here in Bavaria, because people go to the small Gasthofs and pub breweries and stuff, and they're remote. They're sometimes in the mountains. You can't. I mean, you have to drive to get there, and so in the local villages, people, sometimes when they sit at the Stammtisch, they probably shouldn't drive, even though it's a short drive. But they do, and they it's just small country roads, and so it's not really enforced by the police. There is a rule about I think it's 0.5. That you
I think
can.
that's what it is here too.
Yeah, but I've
in China it's 0.0.
Yeah, they do what they do here. The local police, speaking of, as I said, the Oktoberfest is starting this coming Saturday. But what they do there is all roads leading away from the Oktoberfest area, they are heavily monitorized by the police, and they will stop you. They will. You should expect to be checked.
Stopped and breathalyzed.
Yeah. You should expect to be checked. Absolutely.
Definitely. Speaking about how you were talking about little guest houses up in the hills. I remember the very first time I went to Bavaria, and don't ask me whereabouts this was. I think we were coming back from maybe Garmisch-Partenkirchen to Munich, and we went. My other friend who lived in Munich, he took us to this little pub, and they made their own beer there, and they actually stuck like a pine nettle in the stein of beer. So so something like unique. I hadn't thought about that in 20 years until you just was talking about little breweries and stuff off the side of the road. Yeah, so I had a stein of like this reddish coloured beer, and they had like a a big bloody bit off a pine tree that they stuck in the liter stein. That obviously added some sort of taste to the beer that made it better. But yeah, just unique thing about stopping at little places that have their own little specialties, isn't it? And things like that you wouldn't normally see. So.
That's it. That's just it. Yeah. So yeah, Mark, we've been at it for over an hour now. Yeah, we didn't really get to talk about Denmark.
We'll talk about that next time then. Next week's episode will be about Denmark. Then.
But Denmark was nice. It was the weather wasn't too good. But yeah, we had some good weeks in the summer house by the beach. It was all good. So
Sounds good.
But it was weather-wise it wasn't. And our son Anton is getting, is a teenage, and he was away from his girlfriend, and it's kind of getting to that, phase in life where, as probably many people traveling as a family, they experience where actually the kid might rather be staying at home than traveling with the parents all the time.
Take the girlfriend with you.
We actually offered that. And it was on the table for a while, but then her parents kind of hit the brake on it. Probably for the better, because I don't think she would have been ready to be with us for
3 weeks,
or even just 10 days. We could have put her on a train back to Munich, but next time maybe. So
look, it does become like that. You get to the stage, or even to the stage, I think where our kids were sort of that age, 15, 16, you'd go somewhere and they'd spend most of the day in their hotel room, on the phone, or and they'd wander out and get food, but other than that, they weren't overly interested in in a lot of stuff that you were doing unless it was something that really interested them, you know what I mean? Or past the stage where you could just drag them around and say, come on, we're going here, this is what we want to do,
And that's exactly what happened. I mean, he was looking into his phone all the time, we're quite annoyed by it, I guess, because it's a balance, because everything that's important in his life is happening in that damn phone. It's really friends, girlfriend, everything. It's just there all the time, and you take him away to get some holiday experiences and just be together as a family. So you want to find a balance, but it's they will always challenge that. They will always the kids, they will always challenge it.
Yeah, and like you said, it's hard. It's hard for parents. Like, I used to feel that it was a really waste of my money at times, because I've taken you here and we've spent all this money, and you said you want to come on holiday, so.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
And you sit in your hotel room. You could be sitting in your bedroom doing this at home, and it wouldn't have cost me an airfare and a hotel and dinner and breakfast every frigging day for you to sit on your phone in the hotel room.
That's exactly it. You're speaking to the choir there. That's exactly what I said when I was annoyed when you could actually just stay in your room and you wouldn't even notice that we were gone.
No, that's it. Pretty much. Yeah, and that's what happens, isn't it? So it's. That's the stage you're in, I guess. I've just, like I said, I've been telling you, we're at the stage where I've left Marley at home all year, pretty much. I haven't taken her anywhere. So Christmas time, she's coming with us, and I think that'll be good because, she won't have been anywhere since we were in China last Christmas time. So it'll have been 14 months since she's been travelling. So she might actually be ready to appreciate it again. I think I spoiled them by going, 2 or 3 places every year, and after a while they're just like, I just want to sit in my room or go shopping or, do something like that, which I'm like.
That's true.
So, new phase of life coming for you in a few years, mate, when you and Alex can travel. So
exactly. We're looking forward to that. Anyways, Mark, it's been a pleasure getting back into the swing of things.
Definitely.
We'll talk next week. We'll just chat online about time. And,
definitely. But we'll be back next week for sure, and then we'll
maybe
be
even
off again.
if you're leaving in 2 weeks, we can do another couple of episodes, I guess, before you leave.
I think I'm leaving Tuesday of not next week, but the week after. So we might be able to fit one in next Monday or next week, and then the Monday or something. But we'll definitely
something
get
like that.
one more episode in anyway. So
yeah, exactly, absolutely.
yeah.
So say hello to the family.
Say hi to your family too.
I will.
Back on air.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.